Character Study is a production of Fortt Media. Come along on this journey with us. Go to bible.fortt.com, that's bible.fortt.com, and join the email list to be the first to learn about our Bible plans on the YouVersion Bible app and other free resources. Welcome to Character Study. Once again, I am John Fortt, here with my best friend, David Tieche, and we in Character Study like to look at the Bible through the perspective of the people in it, what they teach us about ourselves, what they teach us about God. And we have a doozy this time for the preparation for Holy Week, for Lent. Judas, Dave.
Yeah, I thought it'd be good to look at this character who is one of the most infamous characters probably in the world. His name is kind of synonymous with betrayer, a Judas is he's had a kind of a negative cast dispersed upon him for
kind of
big deal. I was trying to figure out who's a worse character. Is it Judas or Pilate? Is it worse to be called a Judas or a Pilate? They both kind of play similar roles in the Holy Week story and the story of the Passion.
Judas far worse. Far worse.
Yeah.
I mean, Judas hung out with Jesus. He was a disciple. He was his guy. Pilate was just sort of this Roman governor guy. Oh, what? This is a weird situation. And he seems to get almost not exonerated, but hey, I'm trying to let him go, but they just won't let me. And so I'm just going to do what's expedient. Right?
Yeah. He did have more power than Judas did, I suppose, in some ways. And he doesn't use his power well, right? You could say that Pilate made a really bad managerial decision.
I think he is on the wall of bad managerial decisions, definitely. Like not manager of the millennia back then. His wife tried to tell him a better path to take.
I mean, that's one of the lessons here is listen to your wife, right?
Yes.
I was thinking,
unless your wife is Jezebel, in which case don't listen to her.
Yeah. I was watching a documentary. Ken Burns has a new documentary on the American Revolution, and it's very, very long. And there's times when I just fall asleep because it's like so dense. But Benedict Arnold is a famous betrayer.
Yes.
So that's another.
Not to be confused with Benedict Cumberbatch, who is a famous actor.
Seems like a nice guy.
Seems like a nice guy. Might have betrayed a few people, but only for roles. Yes. Benedict Arnold, for those not in America, is known as turning to the British side during the American Revolution, and nobody in America likes him.
Yeah, betrayed American troop positions to the British, was working with the British, was a spy. I think Shakespeare. I think about one of our favorite. I don't know if I've ever talked to you about what your favorite Shakespeare play is. I love to teach this in high school. Othello. Iago is, and it's like. The whole point of him is betrayal. So Iago is a famous betrayer, though a lot of people probably know Iago as the parrot in Aladdin. So anyway,
the parrot pretty
not
pretty
so much
loyal.
A betrayer.
Yeah, pretty loyal. Not a good thing necessarily in that case, but yeah.
As far as right bird man, I don't know. So but I wanted to stare at this because I think it's instructive. Obviously, we're making some jokes, but Judas is betrayed as a betrayer. And this word betray is used by Matthew 31 times in the text and 10 times in the passages we're going to look at today in Matthew 26 and 27. So this word betray is a big deal. The biblical authors present him as such. A lot of times, sometimes people will say, well, Judas and Pilate were like puppets in a play written by God, and they're only doing what God told them to do or had them do. And so therefore they don't really have any guilt, but that's just not how the Bible presents it. They have moral agency. They're responsible for their actions. That's something at the very heart of what it means to be human. God has given us that. And so we have to stare at their choices, their decisions, and their actions. And I think it's also very important that we don't put them into some sort of, sometimes we put people in they're just monsters, and we put them in a class outside of humanity as if these kinds of things could never happen to us. And I think they can. And so I think we have to stare at these negative characters in the light that, the Bible gives it to us. The narrative gives it to us.
I think you're getting to the root of it there. Is part of the reason to study Judas is not entirely for sympathy, but for relation. What of
Yeah.
Judas can we see in ourselves? And then what of Judas, that betrayer tendency, can we arrest? Can we hand over to God? And can we perhaps redeem? And an example of that right there in the biblical text, which we'll also touch on here, is Peter.
Yeah, I think in many ways these two stories are contrasted. John for sure spends a lot of time focusing on Peter, so I think that we're supposed to maybe not compare and contrast, but kind of learn similar lessons. I mean, one of the things you'll see all the time is people will say both Judas and Peter failed Jesus miserably, and so the issue is not did they fail Jesus? They both did, but like, what are we supposed to learn from their route back,
Right.
or in Judas's case, a tragic route not back, and Judas's story is one of I think it's one of deep tragedy and sorrow. So I think it's worth looking at that as well, because I think it's really tragic. Yeah.
So we'll touch on Peter. We'll actually mention Cain. There's an interesting truth, I think, parallel to be pulled there. The priests who Judas deals with, and particularly leading up to the betrayal, and then afterward, as Judas meets his end, and what we're to pull from all of that. But I guess let's start off in Matthew 26, verse 20. Shall I read 20 to 25?
Yeah, this is in the Passion narrative. This is the Last Supper.
It is indeed. Reading from the World English Bible. Now, when evening had come, he was reclining at the table with the 12 disciples. As they were eating, he said, "Most certainly I tell you that one of you will betray me." They were exceedingly sorrowful, and each began to ask him, "It isn't me, is it, Lord?" He answered, "He who dipped his hand with me in the dish will betray me. The Son of Man goes even as it is written of him, but woe to that man through whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It would be better for that man if he had not been born." Judas, who betrayed him, answered, "It isn't me, is it, Rabbi?" He said to him, "You said it."
Yeah, I mean, tough here. It'd be better that you hadn't been born. I mean, this is a Jewish expression, but it's a strong one.
Coming from Jesus, yeah. I mean,
man, that's rough. I also think about the moment, I think it's in John 13 and also in Luke 22, where it says, as soon as Judas took the bread, Satan entered into him. So this is kind of, this doesn't mean that Judas suddenly lost free will. It just means that he has decided. It's a tragic moment where he decides to fully yield himself on the evil course that he had been slowly choosing over apparently a period of days, weeks, months, years. You don't wake up one morning and say, I think I'm going to betray Jesus. It's you practice it in small, quiet ways, day after day, for months and months. So it's really tragic, and it's unequivocal. It's bad. So that's how the text presents it.
Back to this core issue of betrayal. We haven't really looked yet, so let's, at what it means to betray. So you can betray a feeling that you have on the inside through your facial expression. You can betray a secret that somebody has given you. And you can betray a person, you can betray a cause. So to me, there's this idea of there's something that's being held in a personal or sacred or private space, and then that gets exposed, turned over, sort of threatened, given over to something that's hostile to it. At worst, there's a breaking of covenant.
Well, let me ask you a question. So Peter's famous for another verb, denial, right? And Judas is famous for betrayal, right? It's used quite a bit. What do you think? How would you describe the difference between betrayal and denial? Because one of them seems like way worse than the other. Like Peter's sin of denial seems recoverable in some way. And so, like, how would you even describe those two?
That's interesting, because I think it's similar. We were mentioning Pilate before, and the difference between Pilate as a bad guy and him not doing what the right thing, and Judas as a bad guy actively doing the wrong thing. With Pilate, there's sort of this unwillingness to be inconvenienced in order to do what's right. With Judas, there's this selfish or evil pursuit of what's wrong. And I think with Peter and the idea of denial, there's something similar here. In that sequence where Peter says, I wasn't with them, I don't know him, he's failing to actively associate with his covenant partner. He's failing to be the friend, the follower that he claimed to be. He's not fulfilling his role. He's denying, but he's not turning Jesus over. He's not testifying against him. That would be betrayal.
So it's the difference, like if we can use a war metaphor, like so we're in battle and I get scared and I don't hold the line and I retreat back. I do something cowardly and I retreat back and then it's like, oh, you should have done that. That was a bad move. You didn't fulfill your role that we had talked about, that your responsibilities, you were cowardly, whatever it might be. And so I retreat back and the enemy overtakes that position and now we have to reset. As opposed to betrayal would be I turn my gun on my fellow soldiers.
Right. And there's a fine line, I think. I think of that famous, well, at least to me, scene in Saving Private Ryan.
Oh,
where
yeah.
There's that really intellectual, artistic soldier who just he doesn't have the killer instinct.
Yeah.
And he fails.
He doesn't have the capability. War overwhelms him. Yeah.
And he fails to fire on the enemy and the enemy ends up killing his friends, his comrades, and then not killing him, but leaving him alive, as if to say, you're no threat to me anyway, so you're not worth killing. And the look on his face in that scene where when the idea is you're not worth killing, you wish he almost wishes he had been killed in that moment, because now he has to live with the blood guilt.
Yeah.
Now I think that is maybe closer to betrayal in a way.
Yeah.
Because Peter, as we'll talk about,
because if you can't pick up your weapon in that moment, then when can you? And I guess in that case,
yeah.
Peter
tried to pick up his weapon, but that was the problem, right? is the following Jesus didn't mean that physical fighting. It meant something else. Actually, should we go there? Should we read it?
Yeah.
Let's do it. Okay, so this is Matthew 26, verses 73 through 75. Who knew the verses went that high? Okay.
Yeah, not often, but yeah.
So this is after the confrontation in the garden. Jesus has been arrested, and Peter has followed to see where Jesus is gone. Probably also worth noting here that at the Last Supper, Jesus basically told Peter, "Hey, you're not made of as tough a stuff as you think, and you're gonna deny me." And Peter's like, "Not me? No way." And Jesus is like, when you recover, get with the guys and things will be better. So here's that moment, starting at verse 73. After a little while, those who stood by came and said to Peter, "Surely you are also one of them, for your speech makes you known." Then he began to curse and to swear, "I don't know the man." Immediately the rooster crowed. Peter remembered the word which Jesus had said to him, "Before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times." Then he went out and wept bitterly. So there's this moment of of regret. He's confronted with the reality of what he has done, what he has failed to do. Jesus telegraphed it for him, and he's in despair.
Yeah. Well, so he follows them. I mean, that shows some loyalty, but then he just has no courage, or he's afraid self-preservation kicks in, or utilitarianism. He's like, nah, I can't be associated because then I'll get arrested.
That's an interesting word that you use. And I think it's worth pausing. Peter follows Jesus. Now, he has been a follower of Jesus, where he is pursuing the teachings and intentions of Jesus, not just following him, but keeping his commandments, following him spiritually, treating him as master teacher. Now, Peter is physically following Jesus as he's been arrested, but we have to question whether he is a Christ follower. And as he is physically following Jesus, the people who are questioning him are actually literally doing that. You're here near Jesus.
Are you with that guy?
Jesus?
Yeah.
And Peter's like, nope, I'm not with him, 3 times. So that word follower, I think, is very interesting. A heart versus a feet following, and they can be disconnected from each other.
Yeah, I think that's why he he weeps bitterly. He knows that he's failed. He's denied this precious relationship to him out of fear. And if denial is like, hey, is that your girlfriend? No, we're not together. It's just like, well, why'd you say that? We are together.
Yeah.
That can result in a relational rift. So there's that. But the story keeps going, right? Then we go to Judas, and we'll come back to that too, because Peter's failure is right. And then, of course, the narrative gives us right after Peter's failure, the other one, Judas's failure, right?
Well, tell me which part of that you're focusing on.
I think 27:1. Do you want to get into that?
Sure, absolutely. So Matthew chapter 27, verse 1. Now, when morning had come, the chief priests and the elders of the people took counsel against Jesus to put him to death. They bound him, led him away, and delivered him up to Pontius Pilate, the governor. Then Judas, who betrayed him, when he saw that Jesus was condemned, felt remorse and brought back the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and elders, saying, I have sinned in that I betrayed innocent blood.
Yeah,
but they
just
said,
go ahead and stop there. Just go ahead and stop there. So,
okay.
So he also has some measure of just like Peter went outside and wept bitterly, Judas also. But I thought this was interesting. He's like, I've sinned, I've betrayed innocent blood. And I thought you had an interesting tie back to a moment very, very early in the narrative story. You thought that this kind of ties back to Cain.
Yeah, here's what I see here. You'll recall, everybody, in Genesis, Garden of Eden, Adam, Eve. God says, lots of fruit around here. You can eat all of it except in the tree of knowledge area. Stay away from that. Eve and Adam go over there. They pick the produce, which they shouldn't have, after being enticed by a sales serpent. And, those serpents are good at selling. And they get into some trouble. Outside the garden, they have a couple of sons, Cain and Abel. Cain and Abel bring sacrifices to God. Abel's sacrifice, he's a shepherd. He brings the best of his flock, a young lamb. God's happy with that. Cain, by contrast, brings some of the fruit of the ground. And the wording that the Bible uses suggests that this was not the best. It was just kind of some stuff that he had in the fridge. God's not happy with that. And in Genesis chapter 4, we see this reaction from Cain and a response from God that, to me, it telegraphs a lot of what happens in the heart that potentially leads to these betrayal and denial moments. So starting Genesis chapter 4, verse 5, but he, meaning God, didn't respect Cain and his offering. Cain was very angry, and the expression on his face fell. Yahweh said to Cain, why are you angry? Why has the expression of your face fallen? If you do well, won't it be lifted up? If you don't do well, sin crouches at the door. Its desire is for you, but you are to rule over it. So we see this moment of confrontation between God and Cain, where the evil deed is perhaps in his heart. We know that he's feeling badly, and he has a moment to decide what to do with that bad feeling. Is he going to change his behavior, or is he going to eliminate the thing on the outside that's reminding him of his unworthiness? And that's Abel. So he can change Cain, or he can erase Abel. And God is saying sin crouches at the door, right? If you don't do the right thing, which you haven't done at this point, sin crouches at the door.
It
you have an opportunity.
It seeks to devour you. Yeah.
But you're to rule over it.
Yeah.
So we have this moment where Judas clearly, when sin was crouching at the door, Last Supper, he didn't rule over it, and Satan entered him.
Yeah. Well, and also the quartai you're talking about here, the very first time we see betraying innocent blood and spilling innocent blood is the story of Cain and Abel. And that's fratricide, the first murder. And it's pretty early in the story that sin comes and is that calamitous of a situation where a brother is killing a brother. So that's the idea of betrayed innocent blood. And then God comes and says, your brother's blood actually cries out to me. And that's a huge deal, which goes to show like how God views this. And it all started with sins crouching at your door. And that's beast language. Later on, Peter would famously say that Satan's like a roaring or prowling lion looking for someone to devour. That's beast language. Whenever you see beast or serpent language, it's subhuman. It's not good. It's evil. And that metaphor is it. This is what happens to humans. They get devoured this way, and that's what happened to Cain. He gets devoured, and as a result, his brother, he spills innocent blood, and he's cursed. Right? Yeah.
Indeed. So this moment with Judas and the priests that we've gotten into a bit here in Matthew 27. He said that he betrayed innocent blood. It's interesting that he's coming to priests who are supposed to be these, how would you put it, without saying interlocutors? They're supposed to be these bridges who are bridging
ambassadors and representatives of Yahweh, the creator God, who represent God to the people to the God, and they bridge that relationship. Right. And then so here's where I want to get into this a little bit, because obviously I'm not trying to say that we should have sympathy for Judas. I'm not trying to do some sort of revisionist history or read into the text something that's not there. Like, oh, actually, it's like, what was that movie? The Wicked, it's like, the bad guy's actually the wicked, the good girl's the wicked witch, or Maleficent is actually the victim here, that kind of feel. I'm not trying to rewrite the story. Or what's that Rolling Stone song?
Sympathy for the Devil.
Yes. Yeah. That's not where we're going here, but I want to just stare at this for a moment. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to show my cards. I've read like probably half a dozen commentators on this and theologians, and they all disagree with what I'm about to say. So I'm
the best statements start that way.
I'm telling you. So I know I'm on super thin ice, but I'm telling you, as I read the text, there's some things I don't understand. Okay. So it starts off when Judas, who had betrayed him, saw that Jesus was condemned. And then here's the phrase. He was seized with remorse. He returned the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and the elders. That's who he had gone to betray Jesus. I have sinned, he said. I have betrayed innocent blood. Okay, so then what is that to us? They replied, that's your responsibility. So Judas threw the money into the temple and left. Look, okay, so here's what he does. He acknowledges his sin. He acknowledges Jesus' innocence. He goes to the priests. He's trying to undo it. He's literally giving the money back almost as a way of saying, if I could go back in time, I wish I had never taken this. He throws the money back into the temple. Even the word seized with remorse is metamelomai, which is a Greek word, and it's a little rare in the New Testament. But it's not the word that we use for repentance. I get it, but it does refer to a change of mind. And in some ways, the semantic ranges of those two words overlap. Every single commentator says, "Oh, Judas does not have any remorse. He feels bad he got caught." But I'm telling you, I don't quite get that. It's like, look what he does. He does all these things. He admits his sin clearly. He names what he has done. He names what he's done is wrong. He has a clear theological understanding of what he's doing and why it's wrong. He goes to the temple to speak to the priests, to confess the sin. He tries to make restitution by throwing the coins. He's throwing the coins as a desperate attempt to undo what he's doing. Why is this not actual repentance? I don't. Everybody says, "Oh, this isn't repentance," but I don't understand why it's not.
Here's my theory.
Yes.
Here's my theory. To repent means not to just stop going in the wrong direction, but to turn and head in the right direction.
Yeah. So I get that, but look what so you're a Jew and you've done something desperately wrong, something that God would curse you for, that is desperately wrong, which is the shedding of innocent blood. So he understands that. What is the only way that you can get restitution? And this is where the priests are, I think, abysmal here. And this is where I do have some sympathy for Judas. He goes to the priests, these people who are representatives of God, whose only job. No, that's their job. That's their job.
Yes, but
that's their job.
Priests are the ones who paid him to do the dirt in the first place.
I know we're not there yet, though. So I'm telling you, they're bad priests. We'll get there in a second. But he goes to the priests, and the priests have one job and one job only. And this has been instituted since the Levitical code. And that is, you make an offering for someone so that they can feel two things. Number one, cleansed from their sin, no matter what it is, and forgiven. So forgiven so they can re-enter into the presence of God. That is what all the temple sacrifices are for. That's what all the sacrifices are for in Leviticus. That's what the Day of Atonement is for. That's all that the priesthood is doing. That's their only job. And so he goes to them to get absolution from a sin. And what do they say? I've sinned, he says. I've betrayed innocent blood. And then this line is just, I think it's damning to the priests. What is that to us, they say? That is your responsibility. That's your responsibility. So they throw all the weight of that sin back on Judas, when that is exactly what the temple sacrifice system is supposed to alleviate in the heart of a human, so that they can know that they are cleansed and forgiven. I have a lot of sympathy here for Judas. He goes to try to get absolution, and they say, "What's that to us? That doesn't even involve us. That's on you." And that's on you. What does he do? If all that sin is on you and there's no way to get cleansed or forgiven, he's got no mental choice other than to kill himself, he feels. So he goes away and hangs himself. It's just so tragic. It's just so tragic.
And while that line is damning for the priests, literally, so is running around trying to trap Jesus and then paying somebody to turn him over, and then running a sham trial, and then having him killed. Like, these are the worst guys out there. The least of their problems is that they didn't correctly bring Judas to. I mean, these are not the guys who are going to do the right thing. If we've learned anything in the New Testament about the Pharisees and the priests up to this point, these are not the guys. Like, if Judas had been paying any attention, he should know, okay, if you want to get right,
don't go to my point is, I think there's a real juxtaposition here between the bad shepherds and the good shepherd. And they are horribly bad shepherds. They are awful priests, and they bear some responsibility here. And it is to their shame, and it's God talks about bad shepherds all the way through the Old Testament. Ezekiel, he has tremendous condemnation for them prophetically, and Jesus has really harsh words to say to these bad shepherds. I'm saying these are really, really bad priests, and it has real consequences, and it's just so tragic. And I just feel if he had gone to a good priest, if he had gone to the high priest, it would have been different, right?
Right. Not the person who held the title of high
No,
priest
but I'm talking about
at the
Jesus,
time.
like
Yeah.
our great high priest. If he had gone to the good shepherd, and I think that
Or
might be
or
the lesson here too.
Jesus having been otherwise engaged at the time,
Meaning he's arrested.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe he could have gone to another group of priests, the disciples.
Yeah, and that's probably the other issue. It's like who do you hang out with, right? And bad company corrupts, Paul says. And it's pretty clear from the biblical narrative that these guys felt very distant from Judas, you know. And I understand why. But if he had gone to them, because what does Peter do? When we find Peter, where's he?
Well, let's find out. As a matter of fact, we, I think, should finish the Matthew 27 passage, sort of how that episode with the priests closes out first.
Yeah.
After Jesus has been led away and Judas comes to the priests and confesses that he's done wrong. I have sinned in that I betrayed innocent blood. But they said, what is that to us? You see to it. He threw down the pieces of silver in the sanctuary and departed. Then he went away and hanged himself. The chief priests took the pieces of silver and said, it's not lawful to put them in the treasury since it is the price of blood. They took counsel and bought the potter's field with them to bury strangers in. So that is Judas's end. He goes to the priests to whom he betrayed Jesus in the first place, says, I've done the wrong thing, gives the money back. They shrug him off. He kills himself. They use the money to buy the field and bury strangers in it. It's very sad. Now, in John chapter 21, we see what happens with Peter after his denial. And throughout the rest of this story, it seems that Peter is distant from the mission that Jesus had given him and his sense of closeness to Jesus and perhaps the other disciples.
He's like, well, look, I failed as a disciple, so I guess I'll just go back to fishing, right? That's what I did before, right?
Which to me, I think back to Jesus coming and saying, hey, you're fishing, follow me, and I'll make you fishers of men. And here's Peter going, fishers of fish is pretty good. So let me go back.
Yeah, I've obviously failed at the first one, so I guess I got to go back to the, I failed at it. So, I mean, what else is he supposed to do? He's completely disqualified himself from that call of Jesus. So he goes back to the fishing of fish, right?
And he goes back and he's failing at that too.
I just can't get a break.
Haven't caught anything. Some guy shows up on the shore being like, throw the net on the other side. All right, why not?
But wait, I'm going to pause you. He is with the disciples though. They're all hanging out.
Yeah.
Fishing for fish. And they're with him. So that matters too.
Yes. He's surrounded himself with he's not hanging out fishing with the Pharisees or with the chief priests. He's with the disciples. So, not actively pursuing the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Not actively pursuing the right thing. Jesus comes up, says, toss the net on the other side. There's a ton of fish. They're like, ding, nobody does this kind of thing but Jesus. So I can't see exactly who it is, but we know who it is. And Jesus comes and eats with Peter, fish breakfast, because they got plenty of fish. Starting at verse 15. So when they had eaten their breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me more than these? He said to him, yes, Lord, you know that I have affection for you. He said to him, feed my lambs. He said to him again, a second time, Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me? He said to him, yes, Lord, you know that I have affection for you. He said to him, tend my sheep. He said to him a third time, Simon, son of Jonah, do you have affection for me? Peter was grieved because he asked him the third time, do you have affection for me? He said to him, Lord, you know everything. You know that I have affection for you. Jesus said to him, feed my sheep. Most certainly, I tell you, when you were young, you dressed yourself and walked where you wanted to. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands and another will dress you and carry you where you don't want to go. Now he said this, signifying what kind of death he would glorify God. When he had said this, he said to him, follow me.
This is called the reinstatement of Peter, right? This moment. And this is going to become a huge moment, not just in the narrative, but also in church history. We had the opportunity to go to Florence as a family, and there's a beautiful structure there called the Duomo, and there's a huge structure right next to this huge church. It's a giant one. It's called the Baptismal, and that's where people would stay overnight before they would go to get baptized and become part of the church. And the whole thing was overnight you'd stay and you'd pray, and then you would start off and go down to the water or the baptismal waters, and you do that when you hear the rooster crow, because that was a symbol of denial. And then everybody would identify with Peter, and then they go and then they would get cleansed, the baptism, and they would come out of the waters as new people, and then they would start in their new life. The rooster became like a symbol of man's frailty and denial, and God's faithfulness and his ability to write new stories and to start afresh. And this is, Jesus saying to Peter, hey, you denied me 3 times. How about you affirm me 3 times? Because in the calculus of the kingdom of God, -3 plus +3 equals 0. It's a fresh start, and he gets it. And then he says the same thing he said to him, follow me, right? Which is you're not disqualified. I'm going to reinstate you. So it's really powerful kind of moment that juxtaposes against the tragedy of Judas too.
Something else that this says to me, and I haven't read this anywhere else, but it would always puzzle me why Jesus says in verse 18, most certainly I tell you, when you were young, you dressed yourself and walked where you wanted to. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and another will dress you and carry you where you don't want to go. He said this to signify the type of death he would die, sure. But this reminds me of that moment in the garden of Jesus's arrest, where Peter stretches out his hand to strike off the ear of Malchus's servant in violence. And Jesus says, no, it's not time for that, and heals it. And to me, maybe what Jesus is describing here is young Peter as doing what he wants. That's what he did in the garden. But saying, when you're old, you're going to stretch out your hands and they're going to be bound, and somebody's going to take you where you don't want to go, which is what happened to me in the garden. I obviously didn't want to go. I was praying about it beforehand, but that was the death that I was to die, was to stretch out my hands and be taken where I didn't want to go. And that's the path that you're to follow. Follow me now, right? Not follow me just physically the way that you did when you denied me, but follow me with your whole heart, even unto the type of death that I was going to die, that you were unable to in that moment, where you reacted with what you wanted, instead of what was meant for you.
Yeah, and Peter, historically, according to church tradition, would be crucified, just like Jesus was crucified. And his hands were stretched out, and he was dressed and led where he did not want to go, and he died the same kind of death. He did model and walk in the shoes and of Jesus in the exact kind of same way. So,
and if I recall, according to church tradition, he was crucified upside down, because he said,
I don't deserve to be killed in the manner of my Christ. Let me be crucified. That's church tradition as well. That's not in the biblical text, but yeah, church tradition has said that. The idea is that Peter eventually becomes Peter, right? The full Peter that Jesus saw, the disciple Peter, not the renegade Peter, not the impetuous Peter, not the hothead Peter. That God has done the work, and Peter's been changed and transformed by his relationship with Jesus. So
we have, again, this contrast between betrayal and denial, between Judas's end and Peter's. We were talking about Peter's eventual end, but the transformation that happens in Peter between his denial, his reinstatement, his ministry, and then Peter's crucifixion. what are we to take away from the character of Judas and the not only points of his mistake, but the failed recovery from that mistake?
Yeah, I think the failed recovery is the might be the big thing. The issue is not will we fail Jesus, or will we make mistakes, or will we even deny Jesus, or even betray Jesus. I mean, all of us in some ways are going to walk down that path. That's we're gonna make mistakes. The issue is not do we make mistakes, and I don't even think the biblical story tells us that. I don't think we're supposed to see Peter as a hero and Judas as a villain. I mean, they both are really, make big giant mistakes. But who Judas goes to and who Peter goes to, who they surround themselves with, who they listen to, all those things are, I think, instructive for us. And I think in the end of it, I think we're supposed to say, look, don't go to the corrupt priest or hang out with them. Go to the high priest. Go to the good shepherd, and he will take care of all of our iniquity, all the ways that we sin and mess up in small and big ways, and we can actually be restored and cleansed. And Jesus will say, "Follow me." I mean, that's what he does. And what I love about it is Jesus goes to Peter. He goes to him. He finds him. Peter's there's that moment where Peter realizes who it is, and he literally jumps in the water. He cannot, and that makes my heart sing. It's like he thought that he had been forsaken by the Christ, that he had earned a place outside the circle forever, and Jesus comes and finds him, and then eats with him, and then the gentleness of his restoration, and then the recommissioning. That should make every heart sing that this is the kind of God that we have. And I'm confident that if Judas had somehow, repented and figured out how to hang out and with the disciples and gotten to Jesus, that Jesus would have done the same thing for Judas. If he says to the guy, "Forgive them, Father, they don't know what they're doing." If he says that to the centurions who are literally killing him, he can say that to Judas too. And the tragedy is that Judas did not.
Indeed. Well, that's a perfect place to close. Dave, this has been instructive. We're going to do it again. This has been John Fortt and David Tieche, the character study of the infamous Judas. If you enjoyed what you heard, please go to bible.fort.com. That's bible.fort.com, and join the email list to be the first to learn about our Bible plans on the YouVersion Bible app and other free resources. Character Study is a production of Fortt Media.